Welcome to our first session in Yanism 101, okay, where we answer the most fundamental question: why is God black and why is God a woman? Now, there's a lot of confusion and misconception about black and female. Usually, when someone hears, you know, hear me say, oh, God is a black woman, the first thing they ask, well, why does God have a gender? God transcends gender, and why does God have a race? God transcends race, right? So we're going to get into that first and foremost. But notice how that is usually the response whenever God is depicted as female or black, right? But when God is depicted as a white male with blonde hair hanging to his shoulders, nice little blowout with blue, crystal blue eyes, right? It's oh fuck. You know what I mean? So we're going to get into that. It is a very philosophical question. It is a deep spiritual question. It is one that is very existential because in order to understand ourselves, we have to understand our cosmic parent, our creator, right? So we're definitely going to dive deep into that. And I want you to step into this class with an open mind, of course, especially if you've never heard this philosophy before. Step in with an open mind because you can't learn anything if you step into a place with a full cup, okay? So empty your cup, come in open, and we'll see how this goes. Enjoy the journey. Okay, so why is God black and why is God female? First, I'm going to break it up into two sections. So we're going to deal with the black part first, and then we're going to deal with the female part second. In the beginning, there was darkness. Now, that is a phrase that I'm sure you've heard. Many mythological stories begin with the same beginning, okay? So we're going to look at quite a few to see what it is that they say. In the Kemetic spirituality, which is ancient Egypt, right, there is a goddess called Noon, okay? Noon is the boundless cosmic waters, the dark abyss that existed before all things. And from her, the first creator, a tomb emerged.
Within the heart of the living Noon stirred the spirit of the waters, the great snake, Apep. From the coils of Apep sprang Atum, the first god of creation, and the one became two.
Now, I know many of you may be aware of different cosmological beginning stories when it comes to the Kemetic origin. I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is that because we are trying to recount oral tradition, because it is oral and it goes through different generations, what we're going to get is different versions of a particular story. Now, one thing that I never appreciated was the story about Ra birthing himself or being the first creator, basically, giving himself fellatio and nutting out into his own mouth and then spitting that out and then creating the first two children. Now, that is an absurd story, but that is what some people believe. Now, I don't want to get too much into this, but it does rub me the wrong way that there is always, as you will begin to see, there is always a older story that mentions a feminine creatress, and then subsequently that story changes over time as a solar deity or a sun god or her son, right, begins to come into power, and then all of a sudden the mother is forgotten, right? She's either forgotten or explained away in a form of chaos or darkness, right? And I want to be able to get into chaos and darkness and explain exactly what that is. But this is a pattern that happens a lot. So for the Sumerian epic, what we have here is Namu or Tiamat. Now, it depends if you are coming from the Babylonian or the Sumerian, the Mesopotamian origin story, right? Again, because of different regions and different peoples, they have different versions of a similar story, okay? So the great goddess Namu is also the abyss. The great goddess Tiamat is also an ocean of darkness, right? That predates Marduk, which is her son, which is the creator that tends to take in popularity after her subsequent death.
Before time itself. In the beginning, there was only chaos, a vast, formless void. From this chaos, two primordial beings emerged. Apsu, the freshwater abyss, and Tiamat, the saltwater ocean. They existed long before the gods, embodying the forces that preceded creation.
Again, I can go into the mythology of all of these, but I just wanted to go through and just mention how each of these particular mythologies contain a goddess first. In Norse mythology, we have Ginnungagap. Okay, that is the great cosmic darkness from which all existence is born and to which it returns.
The creation myth of Norse mythology, as told in the chapter Gylfaginning from Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda. So we get started where we have a primordial void of nothingness right here, known as Ginnungagap. We also have another realm called Niflheim, which is a land of icy, poisonous rivers, and overall ice. We also have a land on the other side called Muspelheim, which is rivers of lava and fire. So what happens is Niflheim and Muspelheim expand into Ginnungagap, at which point the fire from Muspelheim melts some of the ice from Niflheim. When this happens, a being emerges known as Ymir. Ymir is the first giant that we find in Norse mythology. Ymir nourishes himself from the rivers that flow from the primordial cow Athumla's udders. Athumla, the primordial cow, nourishes herself from the salt from the ice from Niflheim. When she licks the ice from Niflheim, another figure emerges known as Buri, who is the first of the Aesir.
And then we have the Dogon, which is from West Africa, right? They have Amma. Amma is the divine force of the great blackness that birthed all matter and the first beings. Hindu pantheon acknowledges that Shakti, or the feminine power, she predates Brahma, right? But again, sometimes, depending on who you speak to, she's not mentioned first, okay? She's not mentioned first. So again, Shakti is the great power that exists before all the other gods, Brahma, Shiva.
Hindus believe Ganga flowed in the heavens, but she was held captive by the creator god Brahma. Then Brahma decided to send the river Ganga down to earth.
But there is one problem, that Ganga has got such mighty force, and if she comes on the earth will drown.
So the god Shiva blocked Ganga's fall, gathering her waters in the locks of his hair.
So Shiva just opened one lock of his hair and the Ganga flowed. She is the mother because she gives birth to everything.
This holy river came from the river in heaven that we call the Milky Way.
They say that Milky Way actually is a reflection that you see in those waters which are still beyond.
So these are just a few, but as much as you do your research, you're always going to come across a beginning that states abyss, chaos, darkness, ocean, watery depths, void. Now, these are all synonymous for the goddess, for the creatress that all things come from. And this is how you know this is a truth. If all nations who have no true proximity towards each other, and even different languages that separate them, what you have here is, why is it that this is all something that is an innate knowing, right? Why is it that they all agree on this one thing? That's how you can tell truth, when there is a collective understanding, right? And I think within our classes, I'm going to get into the interconnected consciousness between all human beings, so that way you can understand that a little bit more. But yes, we all agree on certain aspects of cosmological understanding, and this is the first and most paramount. Each of these traditions all agree that there was darkness first, before light, before creation, and before form. Okay? So formlessness. So they agree on this darkness, and this darkness isn't a concept of absence or nothingness, but it's more so the concept of potential, of possibility, the psychology and spiritual power of blackness. Now, one thing you're going to hear me do is use black and darkness interchangeably. Now, the reason why I do that is because darkness is an energy, right? It is that energy that you feel that may be malevolent, right? It may feel malevolent. Like, I think we all understand what it's like to be around someone and they have like a dark energy, right? Darkness is also when you're walking down the street and it's nighttime and the street lights is, of course, shining on you, but then you look and you see your own shadow, right? That's darkness, right? It's not black, but it's darkness. Now, black in this particular sense is more of an adjective that basically describes the essence of darkness. Does that make sense to you? So the essence of darkness is an energy that describes the primordial nature. Okay, the primordial nature is primeval, or it's source energy. It's something that is unknown. It's mysterious. It's heavy. It is all things. So because we are light beings, right? Because we are separated from that chaos, right? If we were to take in that, it would envelop and overtake us because it is boundless. So boundlessness is something that we can't even fathom completely, right? It's more of an abstract concept that it would take us probably ages to truly understand, because it is the totality of all things. So the essence of darkness can feel scary. And the reason why it feels scary to us is because we don't understand it, right? We fear what we do not understand. And with something that is as complex as all things in one boundless thing, it's like, how can we conceptualize that thing? So despite its sacred and primordial nature, blackness has been demonized, not only in spirituality, but in society, psychology, and even racial identity. Why? Because black represents the unknown, the unseen, the uncharted, and limitless. It represents the subconscious, right? Because our consciousness is our ability to perceive. So our subconscious is what looms around perception. It's what predates perception, right? So almost like when you're going to sleep, you're no longer in your awakened state, right? So when you go to sleep, you are no longer perceiving light signals. That's why everything goes back to the darkness or the blackness, right? It's black. That state of the unawakened state, that's the subconscious, right? And then, of course, we begin to dream, but that's us going back into an awakened state again. But again, that's light signals being produced by our brain. No, I'll get into that as well. I think I did do a video that explains how we see. So go ahead and go to my YouTube and watch that as well. Blackness also represents transformation, okay? In blackness, that is when we are subject to growth, okay? That is how babies are made. That is how the universe is made, okay? Everything happens in the darkness. Just like I said with all the mythologies, before the universe came into being, there was that darkness, right? So the blackness represents transformation. Blackness represents wholeness, okay? It is the culmination of all colors, of all light frequencies coming together, and you have blackness, okay? Much like a black hole that pulls everything into it, you know? And then no light escapes it because everything is together. In color psychology, black is associated with protection and mystery. That's why a lot of times in hoodoo, you will see someone utilize a black candle for protection. Or it is also customary to use obsidian when you want to protect yourself from the EM rays that's coming from your electronic devices, okay? So it's also representative of power and potential, okay? Absorption of negativity and transformation into wisdom. This is why priests, judges, and spiritual leaders wear black robes. Not because it's evil, but because it's the color of authority, wisdom, and initiation. And the reason why it's the color of initiation is because it's the color of transformation, like we said earlier. So initiation is nothing but the process and ritual of transforming oneself from unenlightened to enlightened, from unawakened to awakened. So that is the process of initiation. Now, the Abrahamic religions, they reversed this meaning to mean inferiority, sin, depravity, and evil. They replaced the dark, the divine Black mother, with a white male god and told us that light was good and blackness was evil. And this is depicted in a lot of different paintings where you see angels, you see a white light, you see white wings. You know, when it comes to demon, they're all dark skinned with black webbed wings like bats. And it's meant to be scary. And this is subconscious programming. Like, I need us to kind of understand this. So it's not just what's said in the Bible that gave us this programming, but it's also within art, media, and things of that nature, and the demonization of dark-skinned people. I'm not sure if you understand this, but within a lot of different spiritualities and religions, Black people, or the reason for Black people or dark skin, is usually because of a curse, right? I don't know if you realize, but within the Hebrew Bible, Ham, or the generations or sons of Ham, which is supposedly Africans, they are cursed, right? Same thing if you think about Mormonism.
Head of the Mormon gods called a great heavenly council meeting. Both of Elohim's eldest sons were there, Lucifer and his brother Jesus. A plan was presented to build planet Earth, where the spirit children would be sent to take on mortal bodies and learn good from evil. Lucifer stood and made his bid for becoming savior of this new world. Wanting the glory for himself, he planned to force everyone to become gods. Opposing the idea, the Mormon Jesus suggested giving man his freedom of choice, as on other planets. The vote that followed approved the proposal of the Mormon Jesus, who would become savior of the planet Earth. Enraged, Lucifer cunningly convinced 1/3 of the spirits destined for Earth to fight with him in revolt. Thus, Lucifer became the devil and his followers the demons. Sent to this world, they would forever be denied bodies of flesh and bone. Those who remained neutral in the battle were cursed to be born with black skin. This is the Mormon explanation for the Negro race. The spirits that fought most valiantly against Lucifer would be born into Mormon families on planet Earth. These would be the lighter-skinned people, or white and delightsome, as the Book of Mormon describes them.
Chapter 5, verse 21. He had caused the cursing to come upon them, yea, even a sore cursing because of their iniquity. For behold, they had hardened their hearts against him, that they had become like unto a flint. Wherefore, as they were white and exceedingly fair and delightsome, that they might not be enticing unto my people, the Lord God did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them. And cursed shall be the seed of him that mixeth with their seed. Chapter 3, verse 6. And the skins of the Lamanites were dark according to the mark which was set upon their fathers, which was a curse upon them because of their transgression and rebellion against their brethren. Nephi chapter 2, verse 15. And their curse was taken from them, and their skin became white, like unto the Nephi.
Okay, so there's just so much that has changed our view and perception on divinity and ignorance and evil and the complete opposite of divinity, right? And I think another thing I have to go into is the presence of good and evil, whether it's a real thing or not a real thing. But again, this is just a process of us trying to decolonialize our minds, decondition our minds from all of the stuff that it has done to make us ignorant people, so that we do not become enlightened and we don't ascend. This is the greatest deception, okay? Because in reality, darkness is the divine reality, and light is actually the illusion, the projection of form. So this is the work of the patriarchal religions. You know, they made us afraid of our own divine source and told us that source was a light. You know, I'm going to also, it's just so much. I just can't wait. I just can't wait. But yes, we're going to have to get into how, like the agenda, because it is an agenda. It's an intentional agenda. It's not something that is unintentional. Oh, you know, it was just a mistake. They didn't know any better. They were just ignorant. And I think a lot of us, we would like to take a perception about it like, oh, you know, maybe they're just ignorant and they're teaching from their best abilities of what they think divinity is. And we could just sit here and say, oh, well, you know, these particular men or patriarchal races were just like, oh, you know, this is what we know and we just want to share it with the world. And in essence, that is the nature of colonizing a people, you thinking that you are better and you have the truth. So you come into a nation and you decide to spread your truth to them because you think that you're better and you think that you know the truth. But that was later. I'm speaking about the beginning of when they first were trying to dismantle the goddess worship religions. And that's when they knew what they were doing. That's when they knew that what they were speaking about and what they were preaching was not correct. But they had an agenda. That's when it was intentional. I'm not speaking about the generations that came after that did not know, right? And that was conditioned by their forefathers, okay? So we have to look at it in its entirety. To understand why Blackness is sacred, we must look at the natural world, okay? So the germination of a seed happens in blackness. When you plant a seed, does it grow in the light? No, it doesn't. It germinates in the darkness of the soil before breaking through into the light. Growth happens in the unseen. the hidden, the void, the dark night of the soul. You may have heard of this. Every spiritual transformation is preceded by a period of deep darkness, isolation, and despair, depression. It's a dark time. Okay, now the dark night of the soul is one where you are basically at a crossroads and you have to choose who you are, how you're going to move forward. Some people go into the thought of whether they're going to even continue on in this life, right? And if you are able to go through that and come out of that, that is you transcending your dark night of the soul. You are now transcended, or you've stepped into a new chapter in your life. And this shows your strength. This shows your ability to handle all the obstacles that can be thrown at you. Sleep and dreaming, okay? Before we dream, before we experience visions, messages, or new realities, what happens, right? We enter the darkness. The dream world is where our mind creates new realities, but it always emerges from the void of our minds, okay? The universe itself, what fills 95% of the universe? Dark matter and dark energy, okay? Light is the exception, not the rule, okay? All of that space in between stars, all of that space in between particles, subatomic particles, in between that, what do you think is the filler, right? The filler. It's almost the same thing as you having black construction paper and then sprinkling some glitter over it. The black construction paper is the totality of the thing. The glitter is the decoration. So that's what this that's what this universe is, okay? The light is the decoration of what the universe is, which is blackness. So that's the divine reality. Darkness is not the opposite of life. It is life-giving. Blackness is not something to fear. It is the ultimate source of power, wisdom, and transformation. One of our foundational universal laws is all is mental. That means that our perception of reality is an illusion, a mental projection. The physical world we see is a manifestation of thought, energy, and frequency. Light is an effect, not a cause. Darkness is the true source, the infinite womb from which all things are imagined and birthed. In other words, blackness is reality, the divine, infinite, and eternal. Light is perception, a temporary projection, a fleeting experience. This understanding shatters the Western religion's model of a male god in heaven casting judgment from a throne of light. Instead, it returns us to the truth that God is black because black is the source of all things. God is female because creation is an inherently feminine act. The nature of creation. Why birthing life is an inherently feminine function. So, I'm going to ask you guys an age-old question, okay? And I want to see what you say. So, type in the comments and tell me right now, which came first? The chicken or the egg? Tell me right now. I want to know. I'll wait. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Quickly. Answer, quickly. Before we dive into the spiritual and metaphysical aspects of creation, let's examine this question from a scientific, evolutionary, and philosophical standpoint, because the answer provides profound insight into why creation itself is inherently feminine. Okay? So let me see what y'all said. Okay, I see y'all. I see. So in embryology and reproduction, right? In nearly all vertebrate species, life begins as an egg cell or an ovum, fertilized by a sperm. Okay? The female reproductive system produces eggs independently of the male's contribution. We all know this. Males do not produce life, they contribute genetic material. I believe we know this as well. This reinforces that the egg is the original creative vessel, while sperm is an activating force, not a generative one. Now, I believe that this is common sense. I think we all learned our reproductive systems in high school, maybe even middle school for some people. I'm not sure, but it seems we kind of have to go over it, even though, because I can tell you right now, when I post on social media, people will come in and say, you know, the sperm is the life and the women just carry the baby and bring it out. But the sperm is the life. They're putting the life in the woman because she is empty. So obviously it's like we have to have this foundational conversation even at our big ages, okay? So, yeah. Paleontological evidence. The first amniotic eggs are hard-shelled, capable of surviving on land, appeared around 340 million years ago, okay? Whereas the ancestors of modern chickens evolved only around 58,000 years ago. This means eggs as a reproductive method predate chickens by hundreds of millions of years. Next, genetics and DNA mutations, okay? Mutations occur inside the egg, not in a fully developed organism. The genetic leap that created a new species happens during fertilization inside the egg cell, meaning the egg precedes the creature it hatches. So I know we're speaking about animals, but this is exactly what happens in humans as well. So in order to have the male species, the mutation or the SRY gene must be activated and adaptogens must enter into that fetus. If not, the default manifestation of that child is going to be a girl, even if it has the X and Y chromosome. Okay, do we understand this?
Hi, so it is very much possible. I was diagnosed with a condition called androgen insensitivity syndrome. So I have XY6 chromosomes, but which you would typically find in males, but I'm very much female because on my X6 chromosome, there is a mutation on the androgen receptor gene. So the protein that's supposed to detect the testosterone that my body was secreting did not work. So I was insensitive to the testosterone. So then my body developed into female, except I don't have ovaries and a uterus. And how I found out was I had not gotten my period, so I basically waited all my life for something that wasn't coming. I'm sorry, you have to laugh about these things. So at the age of 21, when my period was like, I had not gotten my period at the age of 21, I went to the doctor, my gynecologist, to find out exactly what's happening. And yeah, he said he doesn't see ovaries or a uterus. So then we initially thought it was Müllerian agenesis, which is a condition where someone doesn't have a fully developed reproductive system like the ovaries and uterus. But then he gave me a hormonal test and my testosterone was quite high. So then after that, he did a karyotype, which is basically just a genetic test to see which, like a full test on your chromosome count. And then we found out I have 46 XY chromosomes, which is typically a male karyotype, except I'm very much female. Yeah, and
so the mutation happens first. Then we have the manifestation of the man or the male species. So what does this teach us about the nature of creation? The egg or womb is the original source of life. In all species, life begins inside an egg, a womb, or a protective enclosure. The feminine principle provides the environment for growth, nourishment, and transformation. The male contribution is important, but it is not the originator of life. Feminine energy is self-sustaining. Some species, like some reptiles and amphibians, can reproduce asexually or parthenogenetically, meaning they do not need sperm to create life. However, no species can reproduce without an egg or ovum. Think about that. A species can create without the fertilization of a sperm. Some do, some don't. But name me a species that can reproduce without an egg or ovum. Wait. Masculinity is an extension, not the origin. The feminine exists independently. It is the first and the foundational. The masculine emerges from the feminine, serving as a polar expression rather than a separate force. So if creation is inherently feminine, then the idea of a solo male god is illogical, not historically accurate, and not seen anywhere in nature, where a male would precede the female, as in the male birth itself. Even if you wanted to bring up the whole, oh, well, male seahorses, carry the eggs. Yes, they do carry the eggs, but they get the eggs from the woman. Okay. So again, even in that sense, the male is in service to the creatrix. We can get into marine life if y'all want. So we understand that the masculine principle is a complementary force that assists in the creation process of the feminine doing her natural job. To answer the age-old question, right? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's apparent that the egg came first before the chicken, because how would the chicken be here if it did not first be created within the dark abyss place, right? Within the womb, within the egg, within the ovum, within that primordial dark watery space. That space precedes all things, but precedes form. So if we're thinking about the formless to the form, then we would have to think about the blackness to light, the seed to the emanation of that seed, whether it's a chicken, whether it's a person, whether it's an animal, whether it's a plant, it doesn't really matter. Okay, we understanding? Okay, great. So now that we've established that creation itself is a feminine act, we're going to move into how femininity is a default state. Because I did mention earlier that the female is default in the womb before the male is activated afterwards. And I'm going to explain in our next class exactly why that is or how that